Well, it looks like the interest rate hike is all but guaranteed on Tuesday after inflation rose to 3.8% in the last 12 months to December, stronger than expected, while the consumer price index also rose to 3.4% in November. But you'll recall, of course, on multiple times, Jim Chalmers maintains that he slayed the inflation dragon. What a load of nonsense. I'm now joined by macro business chief economist Leith Van Onselen. Leith, nice to see you. Thanks for joining me. What do you put this down to?
Yeah, look. There's the main factor is actually excessive government spending. So one of the reasons why Australia's inflation is so high is because public demand, which is basically government spending, is at a near record high share of GDP. It's actually the highest in Australia's history outside of the pandemic. And most of the economic growth and job growth over the past 3 years has been driven by government spending. So the fact of the matter is we've got governments, both state and federal, I must add, they're running expansionary budgets into an economy that's experiencing severe supply constraints. And as a result, that's helping to drive up inflation. It's pretty simple.
Well, what does this now mean for the federal budget? It's already blown out by a whopping $57 billion and it's been fueled, as you just said there, by excessive spending. Though the Treasurer, he won't admit to it. This is what he said earlier in the week.
The forecasts are broadly in line with what we saw in the 2025 pre-election outlook. To the extent that there is a small deterioration, that is largely explained by receipts, not by spending.
Well, I mean, if the budget is in worse position than initially thought, what's that going to mean for the hip pocket?
Yeah, look, it's obviously not great. So that's a $57 billion deterioration. Now that was calculated by Shadow Treasurer Ted O'Brien. So you sort of, on face value, you think, oh, that's a biased assessment. But actually, budget expert Chris Richardson verified those figures. And he believes that 2/3 of the blowout is due to higher spending by the government. And again, this is higher spending into an economy that's already, overheating or is suffering from supply constraints. And that's actually pushing up inflation. And this wasn't disclosed in the pre-election fiscal outlook because it was most of their spending comes after the forward estimates period. So they managed to sort of kick the can down the road and hide it from public view. But it has come out now. And the fact of the matter is governments need to help the RBA out because the RBA's got one blunt tool, which is interest rates, to try and manage inflation, unemployment, etc. When really it is the federal and state governments who are, through their excessive spending, which are actually driving up inflation. And they need to be held accountable for this, not the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank's simply got one tool and it's doing its job, but our governments need to do their jobs and help them out.
Absolutely, pull the weight because, again, it's everyday Aussies who are continuing to suffer. I've got to ask you about the public service. I was floored to find out, reading one of your articles, that it's ballooned to 24%. That's more than 213,000 staff since Labor was elected. I find this extraordinary, Leith, because you recall late last year, Labor said, we're going to go on this austerity drive. Hundreds, if not thousands of jobs in the public service have to go. This was a very Doge-style policy. The Liberal Party took it to the last election, of course. But then Labor came out and said, actually, no cuts to the public service. And now look at this. I mean, how can they justify figures like this?
Yeah, and I'd also argue that with the rise in the public servants, both at the state and federal level. So to be fair, the state governments have also had a ballooning in public servants. But this 24% increase, it is obviously one of the contributors to this inflation problem we've got. And I'd argue that we're actually getting worse outcomes in policy across the board with these acceleration in public servants. So the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office, their costings actually suggest that government spending is going to rise by $12 billion over the next 4 years if the public servant numbers at the federal level are kept at the current level of 213,000. That's because the federal Labor has agreed to 11.2% pay rises over 3 years. So if they don't cut the numbers, we're going to have another $12 billion deterioration in the budget based on these numbers. It's just not sustainable. And we basically need our governments to get out of the way of the private sector because they are crowding them out with their spending.